It was a clear day when Earth first noticed the visitors. The sky above was bright blue, and the people of Earth were going about their day, going to work, school, and doing their usual tasks. Then, everything changed. A strange object appeared in the sky. It wasn't a plane or a satellite. It was something far bigger and more terrifying. The object grew larger and larger as it approached Earth, and soon it was clear. It wasn't just any spacecraft. It was a massive ship, so large that it covered the entire sky. People froze in fear as they saw it coming down. The ship landed in the middle of a large open field. No one had ever seen anything like it before. The surface of the ship was dark and smooth, shining under the sun, and there were strange symbols glowing along the sides. It looked ancient, like it had traveled across the stars for centuries. There was a hum in the air, a sound that seemed to come from deep inside the ship, making the ground tremble slightly. Inside the ship, a group of aliens emerged. They were tall, much taller than humans, and their bodies were covered in thick, dark armor that looked almost indestructible. Their eyes glowed a fierce red, and their faces were emotionless, cold. The way they walked was confident, as if they knew no one could stop them. These aliens had destroyed countless worlds in their time, and they believed they were the strongest species in the universe. As the aliens stepped onto the Earth's surface, they looked around, scanning their surroundings. They could see the humans below them, small and weak compared to their own strength. The aliens didn't speak at first. Instead, they raised their arms in unison, and suddenly, the sky above them cracked open with bright flashes of light. The humans watching below could only stare in shock and fear. The aliens had arrived, and they made it clear that they were in charge. No one knew exactly why they had come to Earth, but it was clear that they didn't come in peace. With one loud command from their leader, the aliens began their attack. Buildings started to crumble, and the ground shook as the aliens unleashed their power. They didn't need weapons. Their strength alone was enough to cause destruction. Every time they moved, the air seemed to ripple with power. It felt like nothing could stand against them. Their mere presence was enough to make people panic and run for their lives. Earth's military forces were quick to respond, but they were no match for the aliens. Tanks, fighter jets, and missiles were all used, but it was like throwing rocks at a mountain. The aliens didn't flinch. They absorbed the attacks as if they didn't even notice. The humans couldn't believe it. Nothing was working. The aliens were unkillable. The world watched in horror as these unstoppable invaders tore through everything in their path. Cities were destroyed in minutes. People who tried to fight back were quickly overpowered. It seemed like nothing on Earth could stop them. However, as they advanced, one thing became clear. The aliens were confident, almost too confident. They didn't see the humans as a serious threat. To them, Earth was just another world to conquer, and the humans were just insects to be crushed. They didn't expect any kind of resistance. It was going to be a quick victory. But what the aliens didn't know was that Earth's people were not as weak as they thought. Humans may not have had the power of the aliens, but they had something else. They had a fire inside them, a spirit that refused to give up. Even as the aliens destroyed their cities, humans began to think. They began to plan. The aliens didn't know it yet, but the fight was far from over. As the aliens continued their attack, there was a flicker of something different in the air. A quiet resistance was beginning to form. People all over the world started to realize that they couldn't just sit and wait to be destroyed. They had to fight. In the hearts of Earth's people, something was stirring, a determination to protect their home, no matter the cost. But the aliens, confident in their power, didn't notice it yet. They thought their victory was already sealed. And so, the battle between the unkillable aliens and the people of Earth began. But the aliens, for all their strength, hadn't realized that their greatest enemy wouldn't be their physical power. It would be the spirit of humanity. As the aliens continued to destroy cities and crush everything in their path, The people of Earth were not ready to give up. The aliens thought they had already won, but they were wrong. Humans had something the aliens didn't expect: determination and creativity. It started with a small group of scientists and engineers. They gathered in secret, far from the chaos, working together to come up with a plan. They knew they couldn't fight the aliens with strength alone, but they had something else: brilliant ideas. They spent hours studying the alien technology that had fallen to Earth and quickly realized something. The aliens may have been stronger, but they weren't invincible. Their power came from their armor and weapons, and it had a weakness. The humans weren't just hiding. They were preparing. They began to develop new weapons, ones that the aliens would never see coming. It wasn't just about fighting. It was about outsmarting the enemy. The people of Earth learned how to use their environment to their advantage. They set up traps and used the terrain in ways the aliens couldn't understand. Meanwhile, regular citizens were doing their part too. All over the world, people fought back in their own ways. A group of civilians in one city used old construction equipment to block the roads, slowing down the aliens' advance. In another city, a small group of survivors snuck into a nearby military base and hijacked old, unused tanks, setting off a surprise attack against the alien forces. These weren't skilled soldiers, but they fought with a kind of fury and fearlessness that the aliens couldn't understand. At first, the aliens laughed. They couldn't believe that humans would try to fight back with such basic tools. They thought it was pointless. To the aliens, it seemed like a joke. They could destroy anything with a single punch. But what they didn't know was that the humans were not trying to beat them head-on. Instead, they were learning and adapting quickly. Humans worked together, creating new plans every day, finding new ways to hurt the aliens where it hurt the most. In one of the major cities, a group of engineers rigged old machines to make powerful explosive devices. The plan was simple: use the aliens' own strength against them. The humans set the traps at key points where the aliens were sure to pass. As the aliens marched through the streets, they walked right into the traps. Explosions rang out, and for the first time, the aliens were forced to step back. They weren't used to taking hits. Their armor was tough, but it wasn't perfect. The explosions left cracks in their outer layers, and the aliens began to feel pain. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make them pause. The humans were relentless. They didn't just fight. They learned. Each time they lost, they came back stronger. They used the aliens' technology against them, hacking into their communication systems to confuse them. It was a small victory, but it made a big difference. The aliens couldn't understand why they were being slowed down. They thought they were fighting mindless creatures, but they quickly realized that humanity was smarter than they had given them credit for. In another part of the world, a group of farmers used their knowledge of the land to create decoy bases, tricking the aliens into attacking empty areas, while the humans snuck around and attacked from the sides. The aliens were frustrated. Every time they thought they had the humans trapped, the humans would slip away, regroup, and strike again. Meanwhile, military leaders around the world were coming together. They knew that beating the aliens head-on with their current weapons wouldn't work, but they also knew that Earth had one advantage: its people. The military began to train civilians, turning everyday people into soldiers. They taught them how to fight back in ways the aliens wouldn't expect. It wasn't about strength. It was about using every resource, every piece of knowledge, and every bit of creativity to outsmart the aliens. As the days passed, the aliens started to get frustrated. They had never faced a species like this before. The humans didn't fight like other worlds they had conquered. They didn't give up. They didn't break. Instead of falling apart in the face of destruction, they grew stronger. They fought harder, and they started winning small victories. The aliens were now beginning to see that the humans were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their home. Every battle the humans won, no matter how small, sent a message to the aliens: Earth was not going to fall easily. They might not be the strongest, but they were clever. and they were determined. The aliens started to realize that they had made a huge mistake. They thought they were the ultimate force in the universe, but they had underestimated the power of human will. In the end, the aliens were forced to slow down. They didn't know how to fight an enemy like this. Their advanced weapons and strength were no match for human creativity and unity, and for the first time, the aliens began to feel something they had never felt before: doubt. As the war against the humans dragged on, the aliens began to lose their patience. They had come to Earth believing that nothing could stop them. For the first time in their long, violent history, they had met an enemy who refused to give up, an enemy who fought back in ways they never expected. And that was something the aliens couldn't handle. The alien leader, Commander Zorak, was furious. His forces were powerful, but they couldn't crush the humans. Every time they thought they had won, the humans came back, smarter and more determined. Zorak had underestimated them. He had thought the humans would be easy to conquer, just like all the other worlds they had taken over. But Earth was different. Earth's people were different. Zorak gathered his commanders in the central war room. His face was tight with anger as he watched the humans continue to disrupt their plans. His soldiers were getting frustrated, and the aliens had taken losses they hadn't planned for. The humans' tactics were driving them crazy. They used simple tools, but they used them in clever ways that left the aliens struggling to keep up. "We have underestimated them," Zorak said, his voice filled with rage. "These humans are not like the others. They fight back, they think, and they learn. We need to end this now, or we risk losing everything." Zorak's commanders were quiet for a moment. They had seen the damage the humans were causing. They had never faced a race that fought so fiercely with so little. But Zorak had made a decision. He was going to end this war once and for all. He decided to take the fight directly to the humans in a way they would never expect. Zorak ordered his best soldiers to attack the humans' main base. The humans had gathered there to launch a final counterattack, and Zorak thought this would be the perfect time to strike. He sent his forces to surround the base, intending to crush it completely. He was certain this would be the end of the humans' resistance. But Zorak made a mistake. He was so sure of his victory that he didn't consider one important detail: the humans had been planning too. As the alien forces closed in on the base, the humans sprang their trap. They had known the aliens would try something like this. For days, they had been working secretly to prepare a plan that would catch the aliens off guard. The humans had lured the aliens in, making them believe the base was their last stronghold. But in truth, it was a decoy. When the aliens attacked, they found themselves surrounded by explosions, sudden bursts of energy, and bright flashes of light. The humans had set up powerful EMP devices all around the base, disabling the aliens' advanced technology. The aliens' communication systems went down. Their weapons stopped working. The mighty alien forces, which had once been unstoppable, were now vulnerable. Zorak watched in shock as his soldiers struggled to regain control. His plan had backfired. The humans were not just fighting to survive. They had outsmarted him. For the first time, the aliens were losing, and they didn't know how to react. "What happened?" Zorak shouted at his commanders. "Why is everything failing?" The aliens' technology, once so perfect, had been turned against them. The humans had hacked into their systems, learning how the aliens operated, and using that knowledge to their advantage. The alien leader's mistake was thinking the humans were just a simple, weak species. They weren't. The humans had learned to fight the aliens' way, but they had also learned to fight their own way, in ways the aliens could never have imagined. As the battle raged on, Zorak's forces were pushed back. The humans, though fewer in number, fought with incredible courage. They were everywhere at once, striking from the shadows, confusing and overwhelming the aliens. The humans had once again used their greatest strength, creativity, to turn the tide of battle. Meanwhile, in the command center, a small group of humans was busy working at computers, coordinating the attack. They watched the screens, communicating with the fighters in the field. They were keeping the pressure on, making sure the aliens could not regroup. With each passing minute, the aliens became more disorganized, more desperate. As Zorak watched his forces falter, he realized how big of a mistake he had made. The humans had been underestimated in every possible way. He had assumed they would be easy to defeat, and now they were beating him at his own game. He could see it now. Humans didn't need strength alone to win. They didn't need powerful weapons. They only needed their minds and their will to survive. But it wasn't just about the clever plans and the traps. The humans fought because they had something the aliens didn't, a deep, unbreakable bond to their planet, their families, and their way of life. That was something the aliens could never understand. To the aliens, the war was just another conquest. But to the humans, this was their home, and they would fight with everything they had to protect it. Zorak knew now that the war was far from over. The humans had shown him that they were not just an obstacle, they were a force to be reckoned with. And for the first time, he felt a chill of doubt. He had made a big mistake, and it was a mistake he might not be able to fix. The war had reached a turning point, but the struggle was far from over. The aliens had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. Yet even as the aliens regrouped and tried to learn from their mistakes, they weren't about to give up. The battle was about to get much tougher. Zorak, the alien leader, was not a fool. After his forces had been pushed back by the humans' clever tactics, he knew it was time for a change in strategy. He called together his top commanders for an urgent meeting. The situation on Earth was becoming dire, and they needed a new plan, one that would break the human spirit and crush their resistance. "We can't afford another mistake," Zorak said, his voice cold and full of anger. "The humans have surprised us before, but we won't give them a second chance. It's time we show them our true power." Zorak's plan was simple but deadly, a full-scale assault using everything the aliens had. They would send wave after wave of their strongest soldiers, armed with the most advanced weapons they had, and they would hit the humans with everything at once. They would overwhelm them, break their lines, destroy everything in their path. Meanwhile, the humans were still fighting. Despite the aliens' terrifying strength, the humans had proven they could push back. But the humans weren't naive. They knew that the aliens wouldn't stop until they were completely defeated. Earth's people had made incredible progress, but now they were facing the toughest challenge yet. In every major city, humans continued to fight with all their might. The leaders of Earth's resistance worked together, organizing the defenses and setting up traps. But they knew they couldn't rely on traps forever. The aliens were getting smarter, and they were starting to anticipate the humans' moves. The time for clever tricks was running out. Now, the humans needed to fight with everything they had. The battle had spread across the globe. In the middle of one of Earth's largest cities, a fierce battle was unfolding. The humans had set up defensive positions along the streets, using every building and alleyway to their advantage. The alien soldiers marched through the streets, their massive armored bodies crushing anything in their path. Tanks and fighter jets roared above, and the sky was filled with explosions. The ground shook as buildings collapsed under the aliens' attacks. Despite all of this, the humans fought on. They threw themselves into the fight, using old weapons, makeshift explosives, and whatever they could find to hold back the alien tide. The humans may not have had the advanced technology the aliens possessed, but they had something the aliens couldn't fight against: the will to survive. In one area, a group of civilians had managed to take control of an old military base. They used the base's equipment to launch a surprise attack on the alien forces, catching them off guard. The humans used everything they had: old rockets, gunfire, and even modified vehicles. Each attack, no matter how small, sent a message. Earth would not give up without a fight. However, despite the humans' best efforts, the aliens were relentless. The full-scale assault began, and the humans were pushed back. The aliens sent wave after wave of soldiers, using their powerful weapons to destroy everything in sight. The air was filled with the sound of lasers and explosions as the humans struggled to hold their ground. It was clear that the battle was getting tougher for both sides. The aliens had more advanced technology, more firepower, and more soldiers. The humans, on the other hand, had their determination. They didn't have as many resources, but they had the will to fight. The fight was taking a heavy toll on both sides, but the humans weren't backing down. One of the hardest-hit areas was a small town on the outskirts of a major city. The humans had set up defenses there, but the aliens were coming in full force. As the aliens charged, a group of human soldiers made a bold decision. They knew they couldn't hold the line much longer, so they planned to make one final stand. They set up explosives along the road, hoping to trap the alien forces in a deadly ambush. As the aliens approached, the humans waited. Their hearts raced, and the air was thick with tension. The aliens walked right into the trap. With one loud explosion, the ground shook, and the road was torn apart. The alien soldiers were thrown into chaos. It wasn't enough to win the battle, but it bought the humans valuable time. Back in the command center, the leaders of the human resistance were preparing for what came next. They knew the aliens were pushing hard, but they also knew that they couldn't let their guard down. They needed to be ready for the worst. There were more alien forces coming, and the humans needed to be ready to face them. Zorak, meanwhile, was watching the battle unfold from his command ship. He had expected the humans to be broken by now, but instead, they were growing stronger. Every time he thought he had won, they fought back harder. The alien leader was furious, but he knew that this would not be an easy victory. The humans had proven to be more resilient than he had ever imagined. The battle was far from over, but one thing was certain. Both sides were in for a long and brutal war. The humans had fought back, and now the aliens knew that they would have to give everything they had to win. The stakes were higher than ever, and the world watched as the battle for Earth raged on. The war had dragged on for months, and the aliens, once so sure of their victory, were starting to show signs of weakness. They had underestimated the humans, and now, for the first time, cracks were beginning to show in their perfect, unshakable confidence. Zorak, the alien commander, paced angrily in his command room. His once calm and cold demeanor had been replaced with frustration. The humans, despite their lack of advanced weapons and technology, had proven to be relentless. Every time the aliens thought they had the upper hand, the humans fought back with more fire and creativity than Zorak could have imagined. Reports flooded in from his commanders about the ongoing battles. The humans had set up more traps, launched surprise attacks, and used their environment in ways that confused and overwhelmed the aliens. Each small victory the humans won made them bolder. They were not just defending. They were fighting to take back their home. Zorak's commanders could see the pressure building. Some of them had begun to question their orders. The aliens had always conquered planets with ease, but Earth was different. The humans were not like the others. They were starting to win battles, and the aliens didn't know how to stop them. "They keep coming back," one of Zorak's commanders said, his voice strained. "Every time we think we've broken them, they return stronger. We didn't expect this." Zorak's eyes narrowed. He had never seen his troops so rattled before. The aliens had fought countless wars, but they had never faced an enemy that refused to be defeated. The humans were not only fighting back, they were learning and adapting faster than the aliens could react. "This cannot go on," Zorak growled. "We need to crush them, or we risk losing the war. Send more forces. We will not let them take Earth." But even as Zorak ordered his forces to regroup and launch another attack, he could feel the pressure mounting. The humans were starting to win, and the aliens were beginning to feel the strain. Their supplies were running low, their forces were spread thin, and morale among the alien soldiers was starting to crack. The once unstoppable alien army was beginning to break apart. Meanwhile, on the ground, The humans were not resting. They knew that they had to keep up the pressure. Every victory they won was a step closer to pushing the aliens off their planet. The resistance had been growing stronger every day, and they were more united than ever. In one of the underground bunkers, the human leaders gathered for a strategy meeting. They knew that the aliens would not give up easily, but they had learned so much over the months. They had cracked the code of alien technology and were now using it to their advantage. The humans had turned the tide of battle, and they were not about to stop now. "We've done well," said Captain Mason, a leader of the human forces. "But the aliens won't quit. They're coming for us with everything they have. We need to be ready." His words were not just a warning. They were a challenge. The humans had fought hard, but the real test was still ahead. The aliens were regrouping, and the next wave of attacks would be their strongest yet. But the humans were ready. They had learned how to fight smarter, not just harder. In the cities, the battle continued. Buildings had been destroyed, streets were torn apart, but the humans never gave up. They had found new ways to surprise the aliens, from making fake retreats to planting explosives in unexpected places. With every alien that fell, the humans grew bolder. Their morale was higher than ever, and they were determined to win. Even some of the alien soldiers were beginning to question the war. They had come to Earth believing it would be an easy conquest, but they were now faced with a people who were not willing to bow down. The alien soldiers had never been taught to fight for anything other than victory. They were taught to take, to destroy, to win. But Earth was different. The humans were fighting for their homes, their families, and their planet. And that made all the difference. In one key battle, the aliens suffered a huge loss. Their forces had been moving forward, pushing through the human defenses, when suddenly they found themselves caught in a deadly trap. The humans had lured them into a narrow canyon where they had set up explosives. The blast was massive, destroying dozens of alien warships and leaving their troops scattered and disoriented. The aliens were shaken. For the first time, they had been forced to retreat. They had suffered a loss, and the human resistance was only growing stronger. The war that Zorak had thought would be over quickly was now dragging on longer than he had ever imagined. The humans had cracked the aliens' perfect facade. And now, the cracks were spreading. Zorak was no longer calm. He was frustrated, and for the first time in the war, he started to doubt his ability to lead the aliens to victory. The humans were not giving up, and it was becoming clear that they might not lose. Back on Earth, the resistance was stronger than ever. They had learned to fight smarter, harder, and with more courage than the aliens had expected. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, the humans saw a glimmer of hope. The aliens, once invincible, were starting to crack. And that was the beginning of their downfall. The war had been long, and Earth's survival was hanging by a thread. But something had changed. The humans, once pushed to the brink of destruction, were now rising with newfound strength. The tide was beginning to turn in their favor, and the aliens could feel it. Zorak had never imagined that the humans would be capable of what they were doing now. His forces had taken heavy losses, and for the first time since the invasion began, the aliens were forced to defend themselves. The humans were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting to win. In one of the major cities, humans were reclaiming ground. Buildings that had once been reduced to rubble were being rebuilt, and the streets that had been full of alien invaders were now filled with human soldiers, setting up new defenses and preparing for the next wave. The humans had learned to use their environment to their advantage, turning abandoned buildings into strongholds and using their knowledge of the land to set traps for the aliens. The human resistance had grown stronger with each passing day. They had developed new weapons, using technology they had taken from the alien invaders, and combined them with their own ingenuity. They created makeshift tanks, modified weapons, and set up barricades that made it harder for the aliens to advance. Each victory gave them more hope, and with that hope came the will to fight even harder. Meanwhile, Zorak was getting desperate. His forces were thinning, their resources running low, and morale was at an all-time low. His once unshakable confidence was beginning to crack. The aliens had been unstoppable in the past, but now they were facing an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. The humans were not only fighting back, but they were starting to outsmart the aliens at their own game. Zorak sat in his command room, staring at the large holographic map of Earth. He watched as his forces were pushed back in cities all over the planet. His commanders were offering solutions, but none of them seemed to work. The humans had adapted, and every time the aliens thought they had a solution, the humans found a way to counter it. "They're learning," one of Zorak's commanders said, sounding frustrated. "Every time we attack, they're ready. Every time we try something new, they have a counter." Zorak slammed his fist onto the table. "What do you suggest, then?" He snapped. "We can't keep losing ground. We need to end this now." The commander hesitated. "We could try a full-scale bombardment. Annihilate their defenses from orbit. But we risk damaging the planet too much. If we do that, we may not have anything left to conquer." Zorak's mind raced. He knew the aliens could destroy Earth, but at what cost? The planet was rich with resources, and the aliens had always preferred a clean conquest, one where they could take what they wanted without completely wiping out the population. But now, with each passing day, that idea seemed less and less possible. Meanwhile, the human resistance was not slowing down. The tide was truly turning. Captain Mason, one of Earth's greatest leaders, had received a report that gave him hope. A group of human soldiers had infiltrated an alien base and captured several high-ranking alien officers. With their intel, the humans had learned about the aliens' weaknesses, their supply lines, and the secret locations of their hidden weapons. This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. With the new information, the humans began launching more coordinated attacks, targeting alien supply routes and hitting them where it hurt the most. They knew they couldn't win this war with sheer force alone, but with strategy and unity, they could change the outcome. In one of the hardest-hit regions, human soldiers were setting up a final push. They had been preparing for this moment for weeks. They knew that the next battle would be the most difficult yet, but they were ready. They had the advantage of knowledge, of knowing their enemy's weaknesses, and most importantly, they had the advantage of fighting for their homes. The night before the big battle, Captain Mason gathered his team. He looked them in the eye, one by one, and reminded them why they fought. "Tomorrow, we take the fight to them," he said, his voice steady. "This is our home. This is Earth, and we will not let them take it." The next morning, the humans launched a massive counteroffensive. It was one of the largest battles of the entire war. The humans used everything at their disposal: advanced alien technology, clever tactics, and above all, their determination. They stormed alien positions, retook key territories, and fought with a fierceness that left the aliens stunned. The battle was brutal, but the humans were winning. Slowly but surely, the alien forces began to retreat. The humans had turned the tide. Zorak could hardly believe it. His forces were in full retreat, and for the first time, the humans were on the offensive. The alien leader watched as his forces fled from Earth's cities. He had underestimated the humans. And now, the cost was clear. The aliens were losing. The humans had found a way to fight back, an unstoppable force of will and unity that the aliens could not break. As the last of the alien forces were pushed off Earth's surface, the humans celebrated. It wasn't over yet, but the worst was behind them. They had turned the tide of the war, and the aliens had no choice but to retreat. For the humans, it was a hard-won victory, but they knew this was just the beginning. Earth had fought back, and they had proven that nothing, not even the strongest aliens, could break their will to survive. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. Earth had pushed the aliens back, but they knew it wasn't the end. Zorak, the alien commander, could not believe what had just happened. His forces were retreating, and the humans, who had once seemed so weak and helpless, were now standing tall, victorious. He could feel the weight of his mistakes pressing down on him. Zorak's mind was racing. He had underestimated humans. He had thought they were primitive, unable to put up a real fight. Their technology was crude, their strategies unrefined. But he had been wrong. So wrong. In his command ship, Zorak looked out at the stars, his mind replaying the events that had led to this moment. When the aliens had first landed on Earth, they were confident. They had fought and conquered countless worlds before, and they believed that Earth would be just another easy victory. They thought the humans would be easy to crush, that their resistance would be weak. But the humans had surprised them at every turn. They had fought back harder than anyone had expected. They didn't give up, no matter how many times the aliens attacked. They adapted, they learned, and now they were pushing the invaders off their planet. Zorak's commanders gathered around him, their faces grim. They knew their situation was dire. The humans had gained the upper hand, and there was no easy way out. "Commander," one of Zorak's officers began hesitantly, "we can't keep losing ground. If we don't act quickly, we risk losing the entire war." Zorak's eyes narrowed. "I know," he muttered. "But how? They've adapted too quickly. Every time we launch an attack, they seem to be ready. It's like they can read our minds." The officer looked down. "They've become stronger. They've learned from our weaknesses." Zorak clenched his fists. "We underestimated them," he said, his voice low with frustration. "We saw them as weak, but they are stronger than we gave them credit for. They fought back with everything they had, and now they are winning." His mind drifted back to the early days of the invasion, when the aliens had first come to Earth. The humans had been unprepared, no match for the alien forces. But the humans had something the aliens had not anticipated: an unbreakable will to survive. It wasn't just about technology or strength. It was about heart. The humans refused to surrender, and that was what made them dangerous. The aliens had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated the power of human spirit. They had believed that conquering Earth would be easy, just like every other planet they had taken. But Earth wasn't like the others. The humans weren't like the others. They had fought back with everything they had, and they had turned the tide of the war. Zorak's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden report from one of his officers. "Commander, the humans have launched another counteroffensive. They've taken control of our supply lines. We're running low on resources." Zorak stood up, his face pale with anger. "How is this possible? We've had the upper hand until now. They've learned to fight smarter. They've been using our technology against us," the officer said. "And their strategies. They've been studying us, finding ways to outsmart us at every turn." Zorak's frustration turned to rage. The aliens had always been the invincible conquerors, but now they were being outplayed by a race they had considered inferior. His pride had been wounded, and the realization stung more than any physical blow. They had underestimated the humans in every way. They had thought Earth would be just another conquest, but now it was a battle for survival. And the humans were winning. Zorak's mind raced. What could he do now? The alien forces were spread thin, their morale low. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. Meanwhile, on the ground, the humans were not letting up. They knew they had to finish what they had started. The aliens were still a threat, but now the humans had the advantage. They had the knowledge, the will, and the courage to see this through to the end. The humans had learned the aliens' weaknesses, and now they were exploiting them. In the cities, human forces were pushing deeper into alien-controlled areas. The humans had taken back so much territory that the aliens were beginning to retreat in disarray. The humans had found ways to outthink and outfight the aliens, and it was working. The once mighty alien invaders were now running for cover. Captain Mason stood on a rooftop, overlooking the city that had been the center of the battle. He could see the alien warships fleeing into space, their retreating ships growing smaller in the sky. For the first time, he felt a surge of hope. The humans had done it. They had turned the tide of war, and they had proven something to themselves and to the aliens. They were not weak. They were not helpless. "We did it," Mason said quietly to his team. "We've pushed them back, but we need to keep fighting. This isn't over yet." The humans knew they had to remain vigilant. They had proven that they could stand up to the aliens, but the war was not finished. There was still work to do, and the humans were ready. They had shown the aliens that they were not to be underestimated. Zorak's forces, though powerful, were now in full retreat. His regret was deep. He had never expected the humans to fight like this. They had proven him wrong, and now it was too late. The aliens had underestimated the humans, and that mistake had cost them everything. For the humans, it was a hard-won victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. They had stood their ground, and now Earth was theirs to defend.